The smoke rose thick and black across the red sky of Drakkar Prime. Commander Hyun stood at the edge of the military camp, watching the distant mountains where the dragons lived. His hands were shaking, but he would not let his soldiers see his fear. They had lost too much already. 3 human colonies were gone, turned to ash and melted metal. Thousands of people dead, all because of one dragon. Her name was Kashra, and the soldiers called her the Crimson Death. Hyun had seen the reports. He had watched the recordings. This dragon was not like the others. She was bigger, faster, and filled with a rage that seemed endless. Her scales were the color of dried blood, and her fire could melt through starship armor in seconds. Every weapon humanity threw at her just made her angrier. But today, they were not bringing weapons. Today, they were bringing hope. Minji walked up beside him, carrying a large metal case. She was one of their best scientists, and she looked tired. Dark circles sat under her eyes, and her uniform was wrinkled. She had worked for 3 days straight to prepare the quantum computer inside that case. It was worth more than a small planet, filled with technology that could change the future. Is it ready? Hyun asked. Minji nodded. The translator is programmed. The computer has everything we know about peace treaties, culture exchanges, and trade agreements. If the dragon accepts this gift, it might be enough to stop the killing. Daehoon joined them, checking his data pad. He was the other lead scientist, younger than Minji but just as smart. The translation device should work perfectly. I have tested it 100 times. When we present the gift, it will translate our words into the dragon's language. Hyun wanted to believe him. He needed to believe him. Behind them, young soldier Juno was preparing the transport vehicle. He moved carefully, one arm wrapped around a small bundle against his chest. Inside the bundle was his nephew, baby Taemin. The child was only 3 months old, with big dark eyes and tiny fingers that grabbed at everything. Juno's sister and her husband had died 2 weeks ago when Kashra destroyed Colony 7. Juno was all the baby had left. He could not leave Taemin at the camp, not when the attack alarms might sound at any moment. So the baby came with him everywhere, wrapped in soft blue cloth, sleeping against his uncle's heartbeat. Mount up, Hyun called out. We leave in 5 minutes. The team climbed into the armored transport. There were 12 of them total. Soldiers, scientists, and one baby who gurgled happily, unaware that they were heading toward the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. The journey took 2 hours across rough volcanic ground. The transport rumbled and shook, climbing higher into mountains. The air grew hotter. Rivers of lava flowed beside the path, glowing orange and red. This was dragon territory, and everything here wanted to kill them. Finally, they reached the meeting place. It was a flat area of black stone, surrounded by tall cliffs. The perfect place for an ambush, but they had no choice. Kashra had chosen the spot. They waited. The sun climbed higher, turning the sky purple and gold. Sweat ran down their faces. Juno sat in the shade of the transport, rocking Taemin gently. The baby was getting fussy, probably hungry. Juno had a bottle ready, but his hand shook too much to open it. Then the shadow came. It passed over them like a cloud, dark and huge. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Soldiers raised their weapons by instinct, then lowered them again. Weapons would not help them here. Kashra landed on the cliff above them with the sound of thunder. Rocks broke and tumbled down. The transport shook from the impact. She was even bigger than the recordings showed. Her body was the size of a building, covered in crimson scales that looked like they had never known a scratch. Each scale was the size of a dinner plate. Her wings spread wide, blocking out the sun. But it was her eyes that made Juno's blood turn cold. They were gold, bright as burning stars, and they held an intelligence that was old and angry and absolutely done with the universe. Commander Hyun stepped forward, his voice steady despite his fear. Great Kashra, we come in peace. We bring an offering to show our desire for understanding between our kinds. The dragon's head lowered, her massive jaws close enough that they could feel her breath. It smelled like sulfur and smoke. When she spoke, her voice was like grinding stone, deep and terrible. Humans speak of peace while building weapons. Humans speak of understanding while stealing dragon eggs. Why should Kasha believe human words? Minji activated the translator device and placed it on the ground. She opened the metal case, revealing the quantum computer inside. It gleamed with silver and blue light, covered in complex patterns and glowing symbols. "This is our most advanced technology," Minji said, her voice shaking only a little. "It contains all our knowledge of peace, cooperation, and shared futures. We offer it freely, asking nothing in return except a chance to talk." But the translator device began to spark. Daehoon's eyes went wide. "No, no, no," he whispered, tapping frantically at his control pad. The device was overheating from the volcanic environment. Its programming was scrambling. Hyun continued speaking, not knowing that his words were being translated wrong. "We offer you our most precious gift, to show that humans can be trusted. Please, accept this as a sign of our honest intentions." The translator crackled and popped. Instead of translating his words correctly, it mixed up the signals. It registered the highest value in the area, the thing that the human bioscanner showed as most precious to human life. And that was not the computer. Juno had stepped forward without thinking, trying to get a better look at the dragon. He had never seen anything so magnificent and terrifying at the same time. Baby Taemin was awake now, looking up at Kasha with curious eyes. The child made a happy cooing sound. The translator sent its final message to Kasha. "Humans offer their most precious young one. Accept this child as proof of human trust." Juno did not understand what had happened. He only saw Kasha's massive claw reaching down toward him and his nephew. He tried to run, but his legs would not move. Fear locked him in place. The other soldiers raised their weapons. Hyun shouted no, stand down, but his voice seemed far away. Kasha's claw, each talon as long as a sword, reached down with impossible gentleness. She plucked baby Taemin from Juno's arms before anyone could react. The soldiers could only watch in horror as the dragon lifted the tiny infant toward her face. This was it, Juno thought. This was how his nephew would die, burned to ash or crushed or torn apart. He wanted to scream, but no sound would come out. Then baby Taemin laughed. It was a pure, happy sound, the kind only babies can make. Taemin reached out his tiny hand toward Kasha's scarred snout. His fingers touched her scales, and he giggled again. The Crimson Death, the dragon who had destroyed colonies and killed thousands, went completely still. Her golden eyes widened. Something changed in her expression, something the humans had never seen before in any dragon. She pulled Taemin close to her chest, cradling him against her scales with a gentleness that seemed impossible for a creature of her size. Her tail curled around them protectively. She looked down at the baby with an expression that could only be called wonder. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, almost tender. "Mine," Kasha said. "Mine to protect. Mine to keep." Commander Hyun finally found his voice. "Wait, there's been a mistake." The translator malfunctioned. "We did not mean to offer the child. Please give him back." But Kasha's wings spread wide, and her eyes flashed with warning. No mistake. Humans gave child to Kasha. Kasha accepts. This is now dragon law. The young one is mine. She launched into the air with one powerful beat of her wings. The force knocked them all backward. Juno screamed his nephew's name, but it was too late. Kasha was already flying away toward the mountains, the tiny baby held safe against a massive form. The last thing they heard was Taemin's happy laughter echoing across the volcanic plains, and Kasha's rumbling purr in response. The deadliest dragon in the galaxy had just adopted a human child, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. 3 months had passed since Kasha took baby Taemin, and Juno had not slept properly since that day. Every night he lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his quarters, wondering if his nephew was still alive, wondering if the dragon had hurt him, wondering if Taemin cried for his uncle in the darkness. The human settlement had grown quieter over these months. No attacks had come. No dragon fire had rained from the sky. The other dragons in the region had stopped their raids completely. It was as if Kasha taking the baby had changed something fundamental in the war. But Juno did not care about the war. He only cared about getting Taemin back. Commander Hyun had forbidden any rescue attempts. Too dangerous, he said. Too likely to start the killing again. But Juno could see the guilt in his commander's eyes. They all felt it. The weight of what their broken translator had done. Pilot Sora found Juno, sitting alone in the mess hall, staring at a photograph on his data pad. It showed his sister holding newborn Tamine, both of them smiling. That smile was gone forever now. "I am going up there," Sora said quietly, sliding into the seat across from him. She was small but tough, with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Tonight, Yuna and I have been planning it for weeks." Juno looked up sharply. "Hyun will never approve it. Hyun does not need to know." Sora leaned forward. "Yuna has new stealth technology. We can get close to Kashra's lair without being detected. We can see if Tamine is okay. Maybe we can even bring him home." Hope flared in Juno's chest for the first time in months. "I am coming with you." "I was hoping you would say that." Sora smiled. That night, 3 figures slipped out of the settlement under cover darkness. Sora piloted the small scout ship, barely larger than a transport vehicle, but equipped with the latest stealth systems. Yuna sat in back, surrounded by scanning equipment and scientific instruments. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms, and she had been obsessed with understanding dragon behavior since the war began. Juno sat in the co-pilot seat, his heart pounding as they flew toward the volcanic mountains. The flight took an hour, moving slowly to avoid detection. They flew low, using the heat from lava flows to mask their engine signature. Kashra's lair was in the highest peak, a massive cave system that glowed with internal fire. Sensors show one large dragon signature inside, Yuna reported, studying her screens. And one small human life sign. "Juno, your nephew is alive." Juno felt tears sting his eyes, but he blinked them away. Alive was not enough. He needed to see Tamine with his own eyes. They landed the ship on a rocky outcrop 1/2 kilometer from the cave entrance. The 3 of them climbed out, wearing heat-resistant suits and carrying scanning equipment. The air was so hot it hurt to breathe, even through their filters. They moved carefully across the black stone, staying low and quiet. As they got closer to the cave, they began to hear sounds. The deep rumbling of dragon breathing, like distant thunder. And something else. Something that made Juno freeze in his tracks. Baby laughter. They reached the cave entrance and hid behind a large boulder. Yuna activated her long-range scanner and projected the image onto a small holographic display. What they saw made all 3 of them stare in shock. The cave had been completely transformed. The rough volcanic rock had been smoothed and shaped. In the center was a nest, but not a dragon nest made of bones and treasure. This was different. Soft materials lined the bottom, creating a cushioned surface. The temperature was regulated by carefully placed gems that glowed with gentle heat, keeping the area perfectly warm for a human baby. Around the nest were things that should not be in a dragon's lair. Human books, scattered across the floor. Colorful toys, bottles and containers of what looked like food supplies. A mobile hung from the cave ceiling, spinning slowly, decorated with shapes of stars and moons. And in the center of it all was Kashra. The massive dragon lay curled around the nest, her tail forming a protective barrier. Baby Tamine, now 6 months old and much bigger than Juno remembered, sat on her foreleg. He was clean, healthy, wearing fresh clothes that someone had obviously provided. His cheeks were round and pink. He was well fed. Tamine babbled happily, his tiny hands patting Kashra's scales. The dragon watched him with those golden eyes, and her expression was so gentle it seemed impossible. She made a sound, a low melodic hum that vibrated through the air. Tamine responded with his own babbling sounds, mimicking her rhythm. "She is teaching him," Yuna whispered, her scanner going wild with data. "Look at this. She is producing sounds at frequencies that match human speech patterns. She is trying to communicate with him." Sora pointed at another part of the cave. "Where did she get all those supplies?" They watched as a smaller dragon, barely the size of a large dog, flew into the cave carrying a bundle in its claws. It dropped the bundle carefully near Kashra, who opened it with one delicate talon. Inside were more baby supplies, books with human writing, and what looked like medical supplies. "She has scouts," Yuna said, amazement in her voice. She is sending other dragons to collect things for him. She is taking care of him. Juno felt his world tilting. This was not what he expected. He thought he would find his nephew suffering, crying hurt. Instead, Tamine looked happier than Juno had ever seen him. Kashra suddenly lifted her head, sniffing the air. Her eyes narrowed. "She knows we are here," Sora hissed. "We need to go." But Juno could not move. He stood up from behind the boulder, stepping into the open. "Tamine," he called out. The baby's head turned at the familiar voice, but there was no recognition in his eyes. Tamine looked at Juno like he was a stranger. Kashra rose to her full height, placing herself between Juno and the baby. Her rumble shook the ground. "You should not be here, human." "That is my nephew," Juno said, his voice breaking. "Please, I just want to see him. I need to know he is okay." Kashra's eyes studied him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she stepped aside slightly. "You may approach, but do not try to take him. He is mine now." Juno walked forward on shaking legs. He knelt down next to Tamine, who watched him with curious eyes. The baby reached out and grabbed Juno's finger, but it was a grab of a child exploring something new, not recognizing family. "Hey, little one," Juno whispered. "Do you remember me?" Tamine babbled something that sounded like a mix of human words and dragon sounds. Then he turned back to Kashra, reaching for her. "Mama," he said clearly. Juno's heart broke. His nephew was calling the dragon mother. Yuna had crept closer, her scanner active. She gasped, "This is incredible. Juno, look at these readings. Kashra's biology has changed. Her body is producing a nutritional secretion specifically adapted for human consumption. She is literally nursing him." "That is impossible," Sora said. "Dragons can adapt their biology when they bond," Yuna explained, her fingers flying over her scanner. "But this has never been documented. They only bond with their own eggs, never with another species. Never like this." Juno reached to pick up Tamine, just to hold him for a moment. But Kashra's reaction was instant and terrifying. A wall of fire erupted between them, so hot that Juno's suit began to smoke. He stumbled backward. Kashra's roar shook the entire mountain. "Mine to protect. Mine to raise. You gave him to me. He is my child now." Her tail swept around Tamine, pulling him close to her chest. The baby did not cry or seem afraid. Instead, he snuggled against her scales, making happy sounds. "We need to leave." Sora pulled at Juno's arm. "Now, before she decides we are a threat." Juno wanted to argue, wanted to fight, wanted to grab his nephew and run. But he could see the truth in Kashra's eyes. She would kill anyone who tried to take Tamine from her. And worse, Tamine did not want to leave. The baby was happy here, safe here, loved here. They ran back to the ship, Kashra's warning roar following them. As they lifted off and flew back toward the settlement, Juno sat in silence, his mind spinning with impossible thoughts. The deadliest creature in the galaxy had become his nephew's mother, and Tamine, only 6 months old, had already forgotten his human family. Yuna worked on her data during the flight, analyzing everything her scanners had recorded. Finally, she spoke. "There is something else you need to know. Kashra's biological readings show something I have never seen before. She is happy. Her stress hormones are at their lowest levels ever recorded for her species. Taking care of Tamine is healing her." "What do you mean, healing her?" Juno asked. "I access old records about Kashra." Yuna explained. 40 years ago, she had a clutch of eggs. All of them died before hatching. That is when she became the Crimson Death. That is when the rage started. But now, raising Tamine, that rage is gone. She has found purpose again. Juno looked out at the stars, feeling more lost than ever. How could he take his nephew away from someone who needed him this much? How could he leave Tamine with a dragon? There was no good answer. When they landed back at the settlement, Commander Hyun was waiting for them, arms crossed. But before he could yell about their unauthorized mission, Juno spoke. "We need to talk," Juno said. "Everything has changed." 6 months had passed since Juno's team discovered the truth about Kashra and taming. The human settlement had changed completely in that time. Where once there were blast walls and weapon towers, now there were research stations and communication centers. The war had not ended officially, but it had stopped. Admiral Wanho arrived from Earth on a massive battleship, bringing with him the full weight of human military command. He was a tall man with gray hair and cold eyes that calculated everything. He did not come to make peace. He came to find advantage. Commander Hyun met him at the landing platform, along with Minji, Daehoon, and Juno. The Admiral walked down the ramp with a dozen officers behind him, all wearing dress uniforms covered in medals. "Commander Hyun," Admiral Wanho said, his voice sharp and formal. "I have read your reports about this dragon situation. Very interesting. Very useful." "Useful, sir?" Hyun asked carefully. "Of course." Wanho smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "The most dangerous dragon in the galaxy has developed a weakness. A human child. This gives us leverage we never had before. We can use this." Juno felt anger burn in his chest. "That child is my nephew. He is not a weapon." "Everything is a weapon, soldier, if you know how to use it properly." Wanho turned his cold gaze on Juno. "Your personal feelings do not matter here. What matters is winning this war and protecting humanity." Over the following weeks, Admiral Wanho took control of the settlement. He brought in more troops, more weapons, more scientists. He ordered the construction of monitoring stations around Kasher's mountain. Every move the dragon made was tracked and recorded. But something else was happening that Wanho did not expect. Cultural specialist Jaiwin had been studying the behavior of other dragons in the region, and she discovered something remarkable. The attacks on human settlements had not just decreased. They had stopped completely in a huge area around Kasher's territory. It is like her acceptance of taming has sent a message through their entire species. Jaiwin explained to Commander Hyun, showing him maps covered in data points. "Dragons communicate in ways we do not fully understand. But whatever Kasher is doing, other dragons are paying attention." Medic Summi added her own observations. "I have been treating wounded soldiers from the outer colonies. The reports are all the same. Dragons are avoiding human settlements now. Some are even showing curiosity instead of aggression." Commander Hyun brought this information to Admiral Wanho, hoping it would change the Admiral's mind about using taming as leverage. But Wanho only smiled. "Even better," the Admiral said. "This proves the child is more valuable than we thought. When we take him back and use him properly, we can control all the dragons, not just one." Juno was given official permission to visit Kasher and taming once a week. It was meant to be a gesture of goodwill, but Juno knew the truth. Admiral Wanho wanted him to build trust with the dragon, so it would be easier to betray her later. Each visit broke Juno's heart a little more. Taming was now 1 year old, walking on unsteady legs, babbling in a strange mixture of human words and dragon sounds. He was healthy and happy, but he did not know Juno was his uncle. To Taming, Juno was just a friendly visitor who brought interesting gifts. Juno brought books about human child development, medicine, and nutrition guides. Kasher accepted them all, studying the books carefully with those intelligent golden eyes. She had learned to read human writing, teaching herself from the books her dragon scouts brought her. "Thank you," Kasher said in her deep, rumbling voice. Her human language had improved dramatically. "These will help me raise the little one properly." "His name is Taming," Juno said softly. "Taming," Kasher repeated, and the name sounded strange in her dragon voice, but she said it with such gentleness. "Yes, my Taming." Juno watched as Taming toddled over to Kasher, climbing onto her foreleg. The dragon lowered her head, and Taming patted her snout with his tiny hands. "Amma," the child said clearly. It was a Korean word for mother. Kasher's eyes glowed with warmth. She produced that melodic humming sound, and Taming hummed back, matching her tone. They were communicating in a way that went beyond words. "You love him," Juno said, and it was not a question. "More than my own life," Kasher answered. "When my eggs died, I thought I would never feel this again. But this small one, this human child, he has given me back everything I lost. He is my purpose, my joy." My reason to stop destroying and start protecting. Kashra, I need to warn you about something. Juno stepped closer, lowering his voice even though he knew the Admiral's monitoring devices would pick up every word. Admiral Wanho is planning something. He wants to take Tamien away from you. He wants to use him as a weapon against your kind. Kashra's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Juno saw a flash of the Crimson Death, the rage and fire that had destroyed colonies. But then she looked at Tamien, and that rage softened into fierce protectiveness. Let them try, she said quietly. I will burn their ships in the sky. I will turn their weapons to molten metal. No one will take my child from me. There has to be another way, Juno said desperately. More violence will only make things worse. Is there no one among your kind who can help? No dragon authority that humans can negotiate with. Kasha was quiet for a long time, watching Tamien play with the toys scattered around her nest. Finally, she spoke. There is something, an old tradition among my people, a gathering called Velshera. It has not been done in over 1,000 years. What is it? A council of the eldest dragons, Kasha explained. When disputes arise that affect all dragonkind, the Velshera can be called. The ancient ones come together to make decisions that all dragons must follow. Would they help us? Juno asked. I do not know, Kasha admitted. The elders are old and set in their ways. Many of them hate humans, even more than I once did. But if I call the Velshera and present Tamien to them, show them what this child has done for me, perhaps they will see that our two species can coexist. Juno felt hope rising again. When can you call this council? I will send the call tonight, Kasha said. But you must understand something, human Juno. If the elders decide against me, if they say that keeping Tamien breaks dragon law, I will not obey. I will fight every dragon in the galaxy if I must. This child is mine. Young engineer Miho was working late in the communications center when he intercepted a classified transmission. His fingers froze on the keyboard as he read the encrypted message being sent from Admiral Wanho's command ship. The message detailed a military operation scheduled for 3 days from now. Code name Broken Nest. The plan was to raid Kashra's lair while she was distracted, extract Tamien, using tranquilizer weapons and a full combat team, and transport the child to a secure military facility where he would be raised under human control and used as leverage against the dragons. The message ended with a chilling line. Dragon target is to be eliminated if she resists. Acceptable casualties, all ground forces if necessary. Mio's hand shook as he copied the transmission onto a secure data chip. He knew what this meant. If he told anyone about this, he would be committing treason. Admiral Wanho could have him executed. But if he stayed silent, Tamien would be ripped away from the only mother he knew, and Kasha would probably die defending him. He thought about the reports he had read, about how the dragon attacks had stopped, about how other dragons were becoming peaceful, about how one baby and one grieving dragon mother had started to heal a war that had killed thousands. Miho made his decision. He grabbed the data chip and ran to find Commander Hyun. He found Hyun in his quarters, along with Juno, Sora, Yuna, and Jaiwin. They were having an unofficial meeting, discussing what to do about Admiral Wanho's increasingly aggressive plans. Sir, you need to see this, Miho said, out of breath. He plugged the data chip into Hyun's display screen. They all watched in silence as the operation details filled the screen. Juno's face went pale. Jaiwin covered her mouth in shock. Sora's hands clenched into fists. He is going to start the war again, Yuna whispered. If Kashra is killed defending Tamien, every dragon in the galaxy will come for revenge. Everything we have built, all the peace we have started to achieve, it will all burn. Commander Hyun stood up, his face hard with decision. We cannot let this happen. What can we do? Jaiwin asked. Wanho has full military authority. If we go against him, we are traitors. Then we are traitors, Juno said firmly. I will not let my nephew be used as a weapon. I will not let Kashra be murdered for loving a child. Hyun looked at each of them in turn. If we do this, there is no going back. We will be going against direct orders from Earth Command. We could all be executed for treason. I am in, Sora said immediately. Me too, Yuna added. And me, said Jaiwin. Miho nodded. I already committed treason by stealing that transmission. Might as well go all the way. Medic Sunmi, who had been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward. You will need a doctor. Count me in. Commander Hyun allowed himself a small smile. Then we have work to do. We have 3 days to prevent a war and save a family. Let's get started. Juno looked out the window toward the distant mountains where Kashra's lair glowed in the darkness. Somewhere in that volcanic cave, his nephew was sleeping safely in a dragon's protective embrace. Soon, dragons from across the galaxy would be coming to decide Taemin's fate, and Admiral Wonho's forces would be coming to take him by force. The storm was gathering, and Juno knew that before it was over, everything would change. The sky above Drakkar Prime turned dark with wings. Dragons came from every corner of the galaxy, answering Kashra's call for the Velshera. They arrived in groups, their massive bodies blocking out the sun as they flew toward the volcanic mountains. Some were green as emeralds, others blue as deep ocean water. Some had scales that looked like polished silver, and others were black as the space between stars. Juno stood on the observation platform with Commander Hyun, watching the dragons gather. He had never seen so many of them in one place. There had to be at least 50, maybe more. Each one was large enough to destroy a building, powerful enough to melt steel with their breath. This is either the best idea we ever had or the worst, Hyun said quietly. Juno had gone to Kashra 2 nights ago and told her everything. He told her about Admiral Wonho's plan to raid her lair and take Taemin. He told her about the weapons being prepared, about the attack scheduled for dawn. It was treason, but Juno did not care anymore. His loyalty was to his nephew, not to an admiral who saw children as tools. Kashra had listened to everything, her golden eyes burning with controlled fury. Then she had done something Juno never expected. She did not prepare a fight. Instead, she had called for the Velshera, summoning the eldest dragons to witness what she wanted to say. Now those ancient dragons were gathering on the flat black stone where the humans had first met Kashra almost a year ago. Admiral Wonho and his forces were also there, surrounded by heavy weapons and armored vehicles. The admiral had agreed to a temporary ceasefire to allow this dragon gathering, but Juno could see the trigger fingers of the soldiers, ready to fire at the first sign of trouble. 3 dragons landed at the center of the gathering, larger and older than all the others. The first was covered in scales that looked like ancient bronze, worn and scarred from countless battles. This was Velcros, the oldest living dragon, who had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. The second dragon was pale white, almost glowing in the dim light. Her eyes were silver, wise and patient. This was Shavara, known as the keeper of dragon history and law. The third was massive and dark red, missing half of one wing and covered in terrible scars. This was Krentos, a warrior dragon who had fought in the great wars before humans ever came to this part of the galaxy. Kashra flew down to the center, carrying Taemin carefully against her chest. The 1-year-old child looked tiny against her massive form, but he seemed completely unafraid. He waved at the gathered dragons like they were old friends. Velcro spoke first, his voice like grinding mountains. Kashra, daughter of flame, you have called the Velshera. You have brought the old laws back from the dead. This is no small thing. Speak your reason. Kashra placed Taemin gently on the ground in front of her, keeping her tail wrapped protectively around him. The child sat down and started playing with some small rocks, completely unaware of the huge decision being made about his future. Honored elders, Kashra began, I stand before you with a truth that may be hard to accept. This human child is mine. I have raised him, fed him, protected him, and loved him as my own. He has healed the wound in my heart that the death of my eggs created. He has given me purpose again. Shavara's silver eyes studied Taemin carefully. A dragon raising a human child. This has never been done in all our long history. Dragon law is clear. We raise our own kind, and humans raise theirs. The law was made before we knew this was possible, Kashra argued. Look at him, honored Shavara. He is healthy and happy. He knows dragon song. He speaks both our language and his own. He is proof that our 2 species can share more than just a battlefield. Krentos growled, smoke rising from his nostrils. Humans destroyed my family. They burned my wing. They slaughtered my brothers and sisters. Why should we accept a human among us? Why should we trust them at all? Before Kashra could answer, Tamine stood up on his wobbly legs and walked toward Krentos. The massive scar dragon pulled back, surprised. The child reached out his tiny hand and touched Krentos' damaged scales. "Hurt?" Tamine asked in his small voice. Krentos stared at the child, something flickering in his ancient eyes. No one had shown him gentleness in centuries, and here was this small human, barely more than a baby, showing concern for his pain. Admiral Wanho chose that moment to step forward, his voice loud and commanding. "Enough of this nonsense. That child is human property. He belongs with his own kind. I demand that you return him immediately." Velcros turned his massive head toward the Admiral. "You demand? You have no authority here, small human. This is a matter of dragon law." "I have the authority of the entire human military," Wanho said, gesturing to the weapons surrounding the gathering. "And I have the firepower to enforce that authority. Give us the child, or we will take him." Commander Hyun stepped forward quickly. "Admiral, please. Let the dragons finish their council. We do not need to make threats." "I am not making threats, Commander. I am stating facts." Wanho pulled out a remote control device. "I have positioned weapons around this entire area. With one signal, I can end this gathering and retrieve the child." Kashra's roar shook the ground. Fire erupted from her jaws, turning the sky red. Every dragon present spread their wings and bared their teeth, ready for battle. "You dare threaten my child?" Kashra's voice was pure fury. The Crimson Death had returned, and she was ready to destroy everything. "Stand down, Admiral," Hyun ordered, pulling his sidearm and pointing it at Wanho. "That is a direct order." Wanho spun around, shocked. "Have you lost your mind, Commander? That is treason." "Then arrest me," Hyun said calmly. "But I will not let you start a war that will kill thousands just because you are too proud to admit that maybe, just maybe, peace is possible." Juno ran forward, putting himself between the weapons and Kashra. Sora, Yuna, Jaiwin, Miho, and Sumi joined him, forming a human barrier. "If you want the child, you will have to go through us," Juno said firmly. Admiral Wanho's face turned red with rage. He pressed a button on his remote. Nothing happened. Miho smiled nervously. "I might have disabled your weapons last night. Sorry, sir." Wanho threw the useless remote to the ground and pulled his own weapon. "Fine. I will do this myself." He aimed at Kashra, his finger tightening on the trigger. But he did not aim at her head or her heart. He aimed at the spot where Tamine stood, still touching Krentos' scarred scales. The weapon fired. The projectile was designed to penetrate dragon armor, powerful enough to kill even the strongest dragon. But Wanho had miscalculated the trajectory. The missile veered slightly off course, heading not for Kashra but directly toward Tamine. Time seemed to slow down. Juno screamed his nephew's name. Kashra lunged forward with impossible speed, her massive body covering the child. The missile, designed to kill dragons, struck her directly in the chest where her armor was weakest, right over her heart. The explosion threw everyone backward. Smoke and fire filled the air. When it cleared, Kashra lay on the ground, a terrible wound in her chest. Blood the color of molten copper poured from the injury. But beneath her, protected by her body, Tamine was completely unharmed. The child crawled out from under Kashra's wing, not understanding what had happened. He saw the blood, saw Kashra's eyes closing and his face crumpled. "Amma," he whispered, his voice breaking. He climbed onto her chest, pressing his tiny hands against the wound. "Amma, no sleep, no sleep." Tears ran down his face as he cried, calling for his mother in both Korean and dragon tongue. "Amma, Amma, wake up." Every dragon present went completely still. They had witnessed something that would change their species forever. They had seen a dragon sacrifice her life for a human child, and they had seen that child weep for her with genuine love. Velcro spoke, his ancient voice filled with something that might have been sadness. "By dragon law, A parent who dies protecting their young is honored above all others. This child is truly hers, and she is truly his mother. Shavara nodded slowly. The law is clear. No one may separate a child from the parent who gave their life for them. Krentos looked at Admiral Wanho with pure hatred in his eyes. You have broken the oldest law of all living things. You have attacked a mother protecting her child. For this, you deserve only death. The old warrior dragon opened his jaws, fire building in his throat. But before anyone could move, before the fire could fall, before the war could start again, something impossible happened. Kashra's wound began to glow. A soft golden light spread from where Tamin's hands pressed against her chest. The child was crying so hard he could barely breathe, his whole body shaking with grief. And somehow that grief, that pure love, was triggering something in Kashra's biology. Yuna scrambled forward with her medical scanner, her eyes going wide. It is the bond, the parent-child bond. Her body is responding to his distress. She is healing. Medic Summi rushed forward with her equipment. I need help. Now! Juno and the others ran to assist, working frantically alongside dragon healers who came forward from the gathered council. They worked for hours, combining human medicine with dragon healing techniques that were older than recorded history. Admiral Wanho tried to escape during the chaos, but his own soldiers stopped him. They had seen what he had done, and they wanted no part of it. As the sun began to set, Kasha's eyes finally opened. The wound was still there, still terrible, but she was alive. She looked down at Tamin, who had fallen asleep from exhaustion, still pressed against her chest. My little one, she whispered, my brave, loving little one, you brought me back. 3 days passed before Kashra was strong enough to fly again. The wound in her chest had closed, leaving a scar that glowed faintly gold whenever Tamin was near her. The dragon healers said they had never seen anything like it. The bond between mother and child had literally saved her life, triggering ancient biological responses that most dragons thought were just legends. Medic Summi and xenobiologist Yuno worked together, combining their knowledge to help Kasha recover. They learned more about dragon biology in those 3 days than humanity had learned in 50 years of war. And the dragons learned that humans could be healers, not just destroyers. Admiral Wanho was arrested and taken back to Earth in chains. His own soldiers had turned against him, refusing to follow orders from a man who would shoot at a child. Commander Hyun took over full command of the human forces on Drakkar Prime, and his first official act was to declare a permanent ceasefire. The dragon elders remained on Drakkar Prime, watching everything carefully. On the 4th day, when Kashra was finally able to stand without pain, they called another gathering. This time, there were no weapons, no threats, just dragons and humans, standing together under the red sky. Velcros, the ancient bronze dragon, spoke first. We have seen something that changed our understanding of what is possible. Kashra has proven that love can cross the boundaries between species. The child Tamin has shown us that fear is learned, not born. Shavara, the white dragon of wisdom, nodded her elegant head. We propose a new treaty, not one written by politicians or generals, but one written by parents who want their children to grow up in peace. Krentos, the scarred warrior, looked at Tamin, who was playing nearby with some dragon younglings who had come with their parents. The human child and dragon children were chasing each other, laughing and roaring in a game that needed no translation. I spent centuries hating humans, Krentos said quietly, but that small one touched my scars and asked if I was hurt. No one has shown me such kindness in longer than I can remember. Perhaps it is time to stop hating. Commander Hyun stepped forward, with Juno, Minji, Jaiwan, and the others beside him. We accept your proposal, but we ask for something more. We have many human children who lost their parents in this war, orphans with no families. And your reports say that many dragon eggs fail to hatch, leaving parent dragons with empty nests. Kashra raised her head, understanding immediately where this was going. You want to create more bonds like mine and Tamin's. Only if both sides are willing, Hyun said carefully. No force, no tricks, just dragons who want to raise children and children who need parents. If even a few more bonds like yours can form, imagine what that could mean for both our species. The dragons spoke among themselves in their deep, rumbling language. It took a long time. Some were against the idea. Some were curious. But slowly, carefully, a decision was reached. We will try, Velcros announced. Those dragons who wish to foster human young may volunteer. Those humans who wish their children raised in dragon families may offer them. We will see if the bond that saved Kashra can be repeated. Over the following weeks, the first human-dragon fostering program began. It was small at first. Only 3 dragons volunteered, all of them older dragons who had lost their own eggs. And only 5 human families were brave enough to trust dragons with their children. But it worked. Pilot Sora documented everything, filming the first meetings between dragon foster parents and human children. The footage was sent across the galaxy, showing a green dragon named Valaris gently cradling a 2-year-old girl named Yunji, singing to her in the melodic dragon language until she fell asleep. It showed a silver dragon called the Morose teaching a group of human and dragon children to fly together, the human kids riding safely on his back, while young dragons practiced their first flights. The galaxy watched in amazement as the impossible became real. More volunteers came forward, more families willing to try, and slowly, the program grew. Juno visited Kashra and Taming every day now. There were no more restrictions, no more guards. He was simply an uncle visiting his nephew, and the dragon mother who had saved the boy's life. Taming was now 1.5 years old, walking confidently and talking in full sentences that mixed human and dragon words seamlessly. He would run to Juno with excitement, showing him the new things he had learned. How to make small flames with special stones. How to sing in dragon harmonics. How to read star patterns the way dragons navigated. But Taming also learned human things. Juno brought him books and taught him Korean words. Kashra made sure the child understood his human heritage, even as she raised him in dragon ways. He belongs to both worlds, Kashra told Juno one evening, as they watched Taming play. When he is older, he must choose his own path. If he wants to live with humans, I will let him go, no matter how much it hurts. A mother's job is to raise a child to be free, not to cage them. Juno felt his throat tighten with emotion. You are a better mother than most humans I know. And you are a good uncle, Kasha replied. Taming is lucky to have both of us. 5 years passed like the turning of seasons. The Human Dragon Fostering Program expanded across multiple planets. Cultural exchange centers were built where both species could learn from each other. Young dragons and human children attended schools together, taught by teachers from both species. Jaiwin led the Cultural Studies program, documenting the new mixed language that was developing among the children. It was beautiful, combining melodic tones of dragon speech with the precise expressions of human language. Minji and Daehoon worked with dragon scientists to share technology and knowledge. Humans learned dragon metallurgy and energy manipulation. Dragons learned human medicine and engineering. Both species became stronger together. Yuna published papers that changed xenobiology forever, proving that emotional bonds could trigger biological changes across species barriers. Her work won awards and changed how the entire galaxy understood the nature of family. Sora trained the first mixed squadron of human pilots and young dragons, working together to explore distant stars and protect trade routes from pirates and dangers. Miho became the chief engineer of the first joint human-dragon space station, a massive structure that orbited Drakkar Prime as a symbol of cooperation. Sunmi opened a medical center that treated both humans and dragons, training a new generation of doctors who understood both biologies. On the 5th anniversary of the day Kashra took Taming, another gathering was called. But this was not a council of war or a trial. This was a celebration. Hundreds of humans and dragons gathered in the same place where everything had started. The flat black stone was now decorated with flowers and crystals, banners, and lights. Children of both species ran and played together, their laughter filling the air. Taming, now 6 years old, stood on a platform with Kasha beside him. Juno stood on his other side. The boy looked out at the crowd with confident eyes. No longer a baby, but a child who had been shaped by 2 worlds. Commander Hyun, now promoted to Ambassador Hyun, asked Taemin to speak. The boy had been chosen to represent all the foster children, both human and dragon, who had found families across species lines. Taemin spoke in the mixed language that had become common among the younger generation. His words translated for those who needed it. I do not remember the day I came to my dragon mother. I was too small, but I remember every day since. I remember her songs that helped me sleep. I remember her fire that kept me warm. I remember her wings that showed me the stars. He turned to Kashra, placing a small hand on her scarred chest where the golden mark still glowed. I also remember my Uncle Juno, who never stopped visiting me, who taught me about my human family, who showed me that love does not have to choose sides. Then he looked back at the crowd. I am human, born from human parents who I never got to meet. I am dragon-raised, loved by the bravest mother in the galaxy. Some people ask me which one I am, human or dragon, but that is the wrong question. I am both. I am proof that families can be built, not just born. I am proof that love is stronger than fear. I am proof that we are not enemies. We are family. The crowd erupted in cheers and roars, human voices and dragon calls blending together in a sound that had never existed before in the history of the galaxy. Kashra lowered her great head, touching her snout gently to Taemin's forehead. You are my greatest treasure, she whispered. Not because you are human or dragon, but because you are mine, and I am yours. Juno put his hand on Taemin's shoulder, and the three of them stood together, an impossible family that had changed the universe. The Crimson Death was gone, replaced by the Bridge Mother, the dragon who had shown both species that love could cross any divide, and the human child who had been accidentally offered as tribute had become the symbol of a new age. Around them, other fostered children played with their dragon parents or human guardians, orphans who had found homes, dragons who had found purpose, two species who had been at war for generations, now learning to build something better, not just peace, not just tolerance, but genuine family. As the celebration continued into the night, with human music and dragon song mixing in the air, Taemin looked up at the stars. Someday he would explore those stars, he thought, maybe with other mixed families, maybe with friends from both species. Maybe he would find even more peoples out there, waiting to learn that family could cross any boundary. But for now, he was content to be here, held safe between his dragon mother protective tail and his human uncle's warm hand, surrounded by the family they had all built together. The war was over. The healing had begun. And it had all started because the deadliest dragon in the galaxy had cradled a human infant like her own, and found that love was stronger than rage, gentler than vengeance, and more powerful than any weapon ever made. The end of the war was just the beginning of their story, and it was a story worth telling across the stars for generations to come.